Welcome to another episode of the School Podcast. This is a Sunday School edition. And today I want to talk about expectations. For me, I'm going to share with you a 6 or 7 minute clip from me being a keynote talker at a SEM conference in Birmingham, where I really talk about this whole idea of how one of my university lectures really saved me from dropping out of university. Enjoy this clip. Check it out, and I'll come back to you after it. When you're talking about kind of this idea of cultural capital, I didn't really have it. So anyway, I was sat in one of my lecturers at university, and a lady walks in. Her name was Dr. Harriet Shaw. Dr. Harriet Shaw. And remember what I just said about cultural capital? The only version of the doctor I knew was down the GP. So I'm here thinking, why is a doctor teaching me about business? It didn't make sense. But anyway, I was sat there, and I used to play American football. I've had about 5 concussions at that time. And I remember when Dr. Harriet Shaw was talking, I didn't understand anything. This wasn't just a one-off. This was in every single lecture. I was struggling. I didn't understand it. I was struggling. Until we was in like a workshop. Dr. Harriet Shaw sat next to me. We did some work for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then she said, you know what, Cameron, don't take this the wrong way. Have you ever considered, because I didn't know at this point, I did with my ADHD, but she said, have you ever considered you may have dyslexia? I thought, dyslexia? Boy, I can't even spell it. There you go, joke, laugh, laugh, you in the middle. All right, okay. Right, so I can't even spell it. But I said, Miss, do you know what? At that time, my perception of dyslexia was, Miss, like, surely I'm not stupid. Like, what are you trying to say? That I'm stupid? What do you mean by that? She said, I'm just saying it. Okay, so then I did the worst thing possible. I went home and I asked Google. You ever done that before? Had a sore throat, headache, type your symptoms in online? You got 24 hours to live? You don't know, me too, right? Still didn't understand it, dismissed it. Until I started noticing in class, and we was talking about the processing earlier, right? And when I was in class and we had things we had to read, I was just getting off the title. The person next to me was on the 3rd page. Then I started to notice I was skipping over really difficult words, and then I started to just like kind of give up. So I said, you know what, maybe I have dyslexia. And because it was late on in my journey, I had to pay for a test. So I paid for the test. And when I done my test, he said, yes, you got dyslexia and your reading age is also of a year 9 student. A year 9 student. I thought, how did I end up in university if I got a year? It don't make sense. Anyway, that was all I needed. What do I mean that was all I needed? That was all I needed to drop out of university. I was struggling anyway. I pretended I was just some form of entrepreneur who was going to make it big because it was easier to paint that picture than it was to actually do the work. So this was all I needed to drop out of university and not look like I'm quitting. And what made it worse was like I made my decision. I can't go 3 years with university, 1 with ADHD and now with dyslexia. It just can't happen. So what happened was I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. So I'll go around and ask my friends. I'll also go around, ask the lecturers, ask the professors. What do they think? So I went round and said, listen, I'm done here. I've got dyslexia. It's not for me. I've got bigger dreams and it's not helping me here. Most people looked at me. I said, Cameron, totally understand, mate. No problem. Do what's best for you, they said. Do what's best for you. As long as you think you're making the right decision, just do what's best for you. I thought, okay, cool. There's been no kickback whatsoever until I went to Dr. Harriet Shaw. I remember it now. I walked into her office and I said, Miss, in reality, this is probably going to be the last time you see me. I'm dropping out of university. And she said, why? I said, because of the whole dyslexia thing, I just don't think this place is for me. And her response was, did you go and look at the celebrities I told you to look at with dyslexia? I said, yeah, you got Richard Branson, you got Will Smith. I said, Miss, they don't mean nothing to me. There's a disconnect there. There's nothing there. And she said, okay, good. She said, what about me? She said, do you think we have a good kind of relationship? Do you think that we work quite well together? I said, yes. She said, I got a PhD. Do you know what that means? I said, no. She said, that means a lot of work, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of studying. That's what she said. And she said, let me tell you something. She said, I've also got dyslexia. And now I'm on my
third or second paper or whatever it was. I didn't understand it at the time, but she said, don't ever use dyslexia as an excuse to drop out of university. Just say you're not doing it anymore because you don't want to do it or you can't be bothered. Don't use dyslexia because I'm proof that you can do a 3-year degree if I've done a PhD. Why am I sharing that with you? She had higher expectations for me than anybody else did. Even more than my parents at the time. I mean, I didn't see my mum at that time, but my dad, people around me, my friend. Everyone was like, Cameron, you know what you're doing, just drop out. She said, don't use it as an excuse. You can do it. We can put things in place in university to make your journey a little bit easier, but don't use it as an excuse because it's not one, trust me. So why am I saying that? Every single one of us in this room, when we're working with young people, even with our children at home, sometimes it might be convenient just to let a few things go. But every day, what did I say from the beginning? New day, new lesson, new start. And your expectations that you set, regardless if they don't like them at the time, is absolutely key. Because you better believe when I sat there with Dr. Harriet Short, I was there like, but, until I went home and I reflected on it for days. And then I knew the truth. I was using it as a story for me to avoid doing the work.
So yeah, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that little clip there. But it's true, when I was ready to drop out of university, one thing that I went to everybody, and most people just put their arm around me and said, do what's best for you. And in reality, what was best for me was not to drop out of university because I was using it as an excuse. I was using dyslexia as an excuse to avoid doing the work. And when I had that conversation with Dr. Harriet Short, it really, really changed my perspective because ultimately she called me out on my bullshit. She did. She called me out on it. And at that time, it really did hurt. And it hurt the ego for sure. However, I needed that because with a bit of reflection, that really helped kickstart my journey at university, but also helped me kickstart my life in many ways. Even though I'd done a lot of work leading up to there, I wasn't the same person I was before, but it definitely had a dramatic impact. So here's what I'm saying. Sometimes the teenagers and the students and the people that we work with, they have really tough home lives. They have a huge amount going on when they walk outside the school gate. And their life is hard. And the truth is, their life may continue to be hard for a very, very long time. So the worst thing we can possibly do is lower expectations. Because if we do, they may come out of school with an extremely hard life, but with no outcomes. That's a worst case scenario. Where actually, if we continue to have high expectations, continue to push them forward, continue to support, help, but also give them an element of tough love, right? They'll come out of school, yes, with still an extremely hard life maybe, but then they have outcomes. And when they have outcomes, that also means there will be opportunities. There will be doors which may open for them. And now they are in a position to maybe reinvent the wheel, break a cycle. So that is why it's absolutely key. Yes, sometimes we need to put our arm around them and say, we understand, it's okay, we get it. But we can't lower standards and expectations. And I feel like we've all done it at times. We can be guilty of this, not even just in schools, but also maybe at home. Yes, that element of tough love needs to be there. Understand, but let's create a new plan with still high expectations so they come out of school with the outcomes, because that is why they are there, for the outcomes. And use data to back that up, have data to back drive our decisions, our strategy, you name it. But don't forget why we do what we do. Another episode of Sunday School, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. A massive thank you for Dave at Gadget for making this all happen. That he creates world-class videos for schools. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.